You're listening to The Bon Ray Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to The Bon Ray Show on Irish News Radio or itv.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.net. You're listening to The Bon Ray Show on itv.ie and Irish News Radio. Today is Thursday, so we're going to be having a quick look at the media from the UK and from Ireland and from around the world to see what is going on and why we're in such a mess. And the leftists on an extreme agenda with their abortions, with pushing Islam, and our government completely criminal destruction of Ireland and what's happening with that. So let's go through what's happening today. 40 post offices will be closed around the country on the 31st of January. Nothing from our fake media. Nothing at all. Our media is completely more than fake. It's just a blatant propaganda machine, and you should all, if you haven't done so, do so now. Throw out your TV, stop paying your TV license, stop being brainwashed by them, because you're all going around like zombies. And it's crazy. Noel Edmonds tells the Irish that RT has censored his comments, so he's obviously very angry against that. He goes on to the Ray D'Arcy show. He was on the Ray D'Arcy show, and he was talking about what the banks had done, and the media shows how the Irish agreed with them and were clapping. So the RTE censored his comments. Absolutely shocking. Shocking. But not shocking, really. Throw out your I've been saying it for ages to everybody. Don't buy the newspapers. Get rid of your TV. Stop paying your TV license. Stop paying to be brainwashed into their bullshit. Really, there's nothing on it. Share itv.ie and find out the real news, and other people who are out there talking and telling you the real news. Get off RTE, because you're being brainwashed and you believe the complete rubbish. That's why there's so many zombies around, that they actually believe men can get pregnant, and that if you decide you want to be another gender, it's just a matter of thinking that you're another gender. It's like the bullshit about, men who've decided that they're women. I'm sorry, but if you were born with male hormones, no matter what your little mind says, you have male hormones. So you're 2.5 times stronger than a female. You should not be allowed enter a race with females, because although your little mind says you're female, your body and your hormone says you're not. And that's what the difference is in competing in a sport, which is very unfair, because women who were born women have female hormones and have female bodies. That's the difference, okay? So that shouldn't happen. Same as the bullshit men getting pregnant, and then you read into the story and find out he was born a she. So therefore, she started taking male hormones and it didn't work. She ended up getting pregnant. But she was a she at birth. No matter what her little mind said, she may have been a man. So all this bullshit has to stop, because this is against women's rights, not for. So these feminazis, as per usual, work against. Those are interested in these bloody gender-neutral toilets and absolutely crap. If you want where they're gender neutral toilets, there's no point having gender neutral. Just have an open toilets where you can have straight men going in there and straight females or anybody in there, rather than men who say they think they're women, because they say they think they're women, but they could be a paedophile. How do we know what they are? I'd rather have straight men in there. They say they're this, they say they're that. We don't know what they are, because their little mind says they are. But they also could be little pedophiles, could be big pedophiles in there raping children. So no, I'd rather have, if you're going to get rid of it, having, gender neutrality. It's such a bullshit. And then having children X, gender X, like, it's such crap, people. It really is crap. And this, in years to come, we'll talk about how a generation were abused because all of you were sucked in by the media. I often wondered how the Nazis got away with it. And all of you think the right wing was Nazism. I'm sorry, it is left wing. And that is how brainwashed you people are. I was a tomboy. I hung out in trees. I was covered in muck from day to night. I played football. I never played with dolls. Found them completely boring. Didn't like particular girls. Had more boys that were friends and lived in muck. I was a muck savage. I don't remember, and thankfully it was from a time that I grew up to be a girl and a woman, and quite happy to be one. I'm so glad that I was able to play and be a child without anybody wondering whether, I was gender fluid or something, because nowadays that's what would happen to you. And at the time, if you asked me, nobody asked me back then, I probably would have said I wanted to be a boy because I liked boy sports. I liked playing football. I liked doing boy things. But that didn't mean anything. It's just because I was a child and that's what I wanted to play with. I didn't have any sexual feelings. You're too young to know that sort of thing. And for giving children sexual ideas about what they are is wrong. It's actually abuse, and being allowed to give them a sex change before they even understand what sex is, or before they've even got those feelings or understand those feelings, is completely wrong. And lowering the age of sex all over Europe is purely sick. It really is sick. And this is because you're all watching the main media and paying for this propaganda bullshit. Children are children. They don't know what they are. They don't even think what they are. When I was a child, my children, I have boys. I was more of a boy. My mother said I was more of a boy than my brothers, and my brothers were quite rough and tumble. But I was constantly playing with boy things. I didn't want. Now, my mother was trying to encourage me to play with girl things, but I didn't find any of them interesting. My dad didn't mind. Said she's a child, let her be, and I hung out of trees for most of the time. I would have got into fights. I played football. I did all the things a boy did, and preferred hanging around with boys, and would have wanted to be more like a boy, but I wasn't into being with boys. Those sort of thoughts hadn't entered my head. I wasn't more into being with girls. None of that would have ever entered my head, because that's not how children think. That's how adults think. And by putting your views on them is wrong. And this whole generation who will be allowed to have sex changes and God knows what, it'll be a generation that the next generation will be trying to fix, because this is so fucked up. This generation, we are making a mess of the next generation, bigger than any other. To be now a nationalist or to be proud of your country is seen as a racist. 800 years of people had died in this country because they were nationalists and they had a love for who we were, our music. Now you're told that is being a racist. It's crazy, crazy, crazy times. Other news, Gardaí was charged for attacking a 10-year-old girl, sexual attack, so paedophiles in Gardaí. Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. Today we're talking about our criminal government and about immigration, and we're reading through the papers to see what is going on. So yeah, the last bit was the child who had been raped by a Gardaí. I think that's been happening for a while. It's been paedophiles getting into the Gardaí. So what's happening now also is the Italian sinks into recession. There's a bitter spat with the EU over the budget. So it looks like as Brexit takes off, recession is going to happen. The EU feel that they should dictate to Italy, and Italy has a fantastic, strong leader that will not be taking any crap. So the EU will go after them and try and break them as they've done to Ireland, Greece, and Spain. The Germans sends the wrong flag to Ireland in a tweet to say they're on the Irish side. They send the Ivory Coast. I can't really laugh at it too much because Leo did the same when he wants to congratulate the Irish rugby team, and he sends American in a tweet, American football, and he sends the Ivory Coast. And instead of saying, I think he said Leicester instead of Leinster, he just made a complete balls of it, even to the flag. So when the Taoiseach can't even get the flag wrong, you can't really blame the German Chancellor for getting it wrong when the Irish government can't even get it right. The Irish fake Taoiseach. Interesting what's happening over on Tuesday. Theresa May was sent back to the EU. Somebody clever has actually decided to read the Irish history, because up to then they were held over a barrel by the Irish and by the Germans. The Irish government holding them over and barefaced lying about the border and freedom of movement, and scare tactics to the max to the Irish in England and English and Irish. You'll have to get a visa. You won't be able to go. This visa was going to be impossible as well. As if it was complete scare tactics to 90. But the Irish government had to Simon Covey have had to kind of step down, because somebody clever in the British Parliament has discovered the 1922. Now they're calling it alternative arrangements. But someone's obviously read a bit of history and realised they do not need to be held over a barrel over the border, because Ireland and the UK have had freedom of movement since 1922. And that is the only reason the border went up in 1969 was because of a bombing campaign. It was nothing to do with checks of passports. So that freedom of movement is already there. But what they didn't mention, actually, they obviously haven't discovered it yet even, there is another constitution which was 1949, which said that Ireland will never be treated as a foreign country. That is why the Irish, before the EU and the EC, were able to go to United Kingdom, work there, sign on and vote, is because Ireland was never seen as a foreign country. There was always freedom of movement that predates the EU and the EEC. This is why when you're flying out from Britain and you're flying into Ireland, you will go on what's called a domestic route, because they consider Ireland still as a domestic route, not part of the EU, as part of Britain. Not like any other European country or anywhere else in the world, they consider it domestic. And the other thing is, from that 1949 agreement, which is when Ireland declared independence, they call it AIR in their document, Britain never gave up its declaration for Ireland. So its claim to Ireland. So it never gave up its rights to Ireland. So it said it will not be treated as a foreign country. But the Queen had to come here within 99 years for it to hold its claim. And when Britain was signing out of the EU, they used Article 50, but they had to use the Royal Coat of Arms. And on that Royal Coat of Arms, because it predates when De Valera called for independence, which was 1949, on that it has Ireland, because it has the whole of the British Isles, and Ireland is still in the British Isles because the English haven't given up its declaration for Ireland, so it hasn't signed really over Ireland. So although we called ourselves independents, we were still very much tied to Britain up to when we joined the EU. So we went from there. We had a few years of freedom between being under really British ruling and then onto the EU ruling, and that's when we crashed. The few years that we had as a real independent free country was when we were booming, when we'd no ties to the British or to the EU, was actually the time when we were booming. And we're making lots of money. So that was just a little, just in between the two. So that's an interesting. So the British are obviously delighted that they found this document, but they're calling it alternative arrangements. I don't know why they don't call it that. They did mention the 1922 committee is what they're calling it, an alternative arrangements, but really they should be calling it 1922 agreement. But they have it down 1922 community and alternative arrangements, which is now they're laughing because they don't have to be held over a barrel. So they're now free. So they've sent her back over to say, go get another deal. We've been lied to by the Irish government that we don't actually need. But it was up to them, I suppose, to look up their history. And the British are very bad at history. They should have known that. And they should know about the 1949. But I don't think that they do. Otherwise, they would have brought that up as well. So now there's freedom. So the Irish, Simon Covey has come out and said, and had to admit that this 1922, and that it predates the EU and the EEC. So there will be a freedom of movement. So it won't affect. He's after all the scare tactics. They were saying that we'd have to get a visa, all sorts of. He's now come out, not even apologising for the barefaced line. The whole lot of them did, but just kind of under his breath after Tuesday came out and said, "Oh yeah, no, it'll kick into play if Britain leaves, whether it's with a deal or no deal. It won't affect Ireland." After 2 years of barefaced lying, when the British find they did not admit, sorry, we've been lying to you all, Irish, there won't be anything. Oh, no, 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 it'll kick in. So he came out, at least he came out, unlike the Taoiseach who's just ignored the whole thing, and like as if it hasn't happened, and is still backing the EU little flag that he is, fucking puppet. So he's at least Simon Covey, although he's another creature from hell. He's smart enough to realise he had to kind of admit when the British brought up the 1922 committee, he had to admit that it was in place already and that there will be no there doesn't need to be a backstop. But at the same time, that doesn't stop the EU putting a backstop, because it was never about the British putting one in. The EU will put one in, and although it doesn't need to, and the British now have said it doesn't need to be, and the only people who are putting it in is the EU. Now the EU will put it in because they don't want Ireland to go along with Brexit. They're hoping that the British at one stage will change their mind and try and get back into the EU, which that'll never happen because of the amount of trouble they had to get out of it. They will never get themselves back into that situation. So they're afraid that the Irish will go down that same way. And so they want to, because it's completely land grab at the moment, so they will put the border up, and it will be a horrific border, and they will try and set the troubles off again because they want the 6 counties. And because once they get the 6 counties, then they have a chance of getting the UK back. Because this was a land grab without a bullet. They've already got the 26 of our counties, and they're not going to give up that without a fight. So they will put in a border, and they will start off the troubles again. And they will flood us. And they will get people from wherever to get into this bullshit EU army. And that's our days heading for us. But they're going to try and get the land grab for again. So they have to go back to plan B Now the British knows there doesn't need to be a border, but the Irish will sign the border to the British. There's no, or not the British, the EU. There's no doubt in my mind that there will be a border. And there's no doubt in my mind that the British will probably leave without a deal. It's more likely now they might deal because before now they're not over a barrel, where before they were definitely over a barrel, so they were going to leave. Where now they can just play with the EU because they know perfectly well it's only the EU who want a land grab and the Irish government helping them. So the EU comes back with that it plots to sue Britain for 39 million if they leave with no deal. Now, so they've been doing scare tactics and it hasn't worked, but yet they've decided to do another scare tactic, which really doesn't work with the British. All the scare tactics may have worked with the other European countries, including Ireland, but this doesn't work with the British. And we've seen that so far, and I don't know why they haven't copped onto that. So they come back with this idea of suing them. That will push them into more likely a no deal. If you're that fixed on that number, you're going to find that the British will go, okay, keep your number, we're out of here. They're leaving on March, the 29th of March at 11 o'clock, with or without no deal. And if you don't bring down that number to something that's reasonable, they will leave with no deal. The border will go up, whether there is a deal or not deal, because this is about land grab. And it doesn't make any difference whether the British gave them a deal or not. They still want the land. They're greedy bastards. So not do they just want the 39 million, they also want the 6 counties in Northern Ireland. So they're not going to leave that alone. They will put the army up to antagonise the British. And the British will probably end up putting their army in, and it'll start a war. But we'll see what happens. I will say the EU army will be in whether there's a deal or not deal. But I do think that when that army goes in, they will start attacking civilians on the streets. They will bring back, the EU will bring back the Troubles to the full force. The only good news is probably most of the foreigners will leave, which will be great news. That all the so-called bullshit refugees will see a real war and they can go back to their safe countries. Because they'll have to actually really flee from a war zone and actually know what a war zone is to flee from, not their bullshit where there was no war zone, where something like 67% of Syria wasn't even in bloody war. So anyway, they'll get to see what it really is and they can all flee when it really takes off. And most of them didn't even come from Syria, which was hilarious. Most of the so-called refugees, or what they call as migrants, the economic migrants, don't come from war zones. So they'll get to see it. So they'll all run back to their little safe places, which is fantastic. That's the only good news about war breaking out here, is those refugees won't. They've no allegiance to Ireland. They've nothing, so they can just go home. So interesting news again, the UK, this love for feckin' Islam with the UK is their biggest problem. A student was kicked out of university for saying he wouldn't eat halal meat. That's a huge deal. After all this, they get out of the dictatorship of the EUR, then they really need to kind of do something about Islam. Ban it or do something about it, because there's no future for them. And there's just been so many generations of destroyed women in that country. Okay, we go on to New York. New York bringing in a law allowing abortion up to birth. Virginia in America are bringing in abortion up to birth. Absolutely disgusting. In New York, they're repealing manslaughter charges from killing women abortions. So basically, women who die in late-term abortions. Now, in the UK, when they were doing all the abortion referendums over here, they forgot to mention, or they failed to mention, how many women die in abortions. They only went on about one case in Ireland who she didn't even die because she didn't have an abortion. She died because of a blood poisoning. And the doctor failed to recognize that she had a blood poisoning. And they never mentioned how many women and how many Irish women have died in abortions. No, 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 that was completely ignored. But now what they're doing is they're repealing that anyone, because before then in America, you could charge for manslaughter if it was proven, if it was done on purpose and the woman died or whatever. It would have been very hard now to prove that because if she picks a long-term abortion and she dies, which is more than likely she will die in a long-term abortion, because it's not very easy or be left with serious implications, that they would be able to bring them in for manslaughter. But now they're repealing that. So if a woman dies, so if you get a psycho who loves killing babies, like Kermit Costner, who kills babies, he partially birthed abortions, which means they were coming out, and he stuck something into the back of the neck and killed them. Some of them, a 23-year-old baby was who survived abortion, he stuffed her in a medical waste bag and suffocated her. Women he killed on purpose after the abortion. So people like that sick man, which is generally people who be doing abortions, aren't going to be the nicest, kindest people. They're going to be a little bit twisted if they actually want to, and they have no problem in doing abortions, particularly late-term abortions. That is a human being. So if you have no problem with that, like Harris and the other sick people in the Irish government. Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. Finishing off about the abortion in America now, in Virginia and New York, they're bringing it up to birth, and they're repealing manslaughter charges for women, for the abortionists who have killed women through abortion. So they're setting out a new law that will protect abortionists from facing any consequences against murder from women or the babies, and even babies that have survived the abortion. It'll stop any consequences, which is pretty sick. So they're saying if women die in abortions, if the babies die after the abortions, if they survive the abortion, then they will be not held for manslaughter charges. So if you've got a sick man like Kermit Costner, he deliberately killed babies and women in some sort of sick pleasure of watching people die, you will not have. But the left are so incredibly, they are fascist Nazis, and yet they call the right fascist Nazis when they really are the fascist Nazis. It's disgusting. And when they were asked, I was watching a show and they were asked in America what they thought about this, they go, oh, your government stops families at the border. Oh, big deal. Families stops and separates families. Talking about murder. And you're trying to say it's the same bloody thing. They're so sick, the left. I really, really cannot stand the left. And the more scumbag leftist this country comes, I really feel the more white I'm becoming. Because I really cannot stand any of their views. It becomes more absolutely disgusting. All their views, all of it is disgusting. From the fact that they think that that a man who has decided that he is a woman can enter a woman's race. Now let's look at this logically and with facts. If he was born a male, he has male hormones. He has a male body. So therefore, he is 2.5 times the strength of a woman. So no matter what his little brain tells him that he's a woman, which is fine, he can wear his dresses, but to enter female races or boxing matches where one woman got her skull crushed because he was born with male hormones. and a male body. This is absolutely ridiculous. A man, whether he thinks he's a woman, that is fine, but he should not be allowed to enter female races. All these women who train their whole lives for this sport. And there's no point of having a gender divide then. You might as well just have all sports together. Which, women will not be able to compete on the same level as men. And that is a fact. They're not born with male hormones. A man who thinks he's a woman is not a woman just because his little brain thinks but his body, his hormones haven't changed because his brain tells him so. There's no point having a gender divide if that's what you're going to do, because that is unfair. You're just giving the men who couldn't compete with other men allowing into a race. So some man who decides he knows he won't win in running, or he knows he won't win in boxing against a man. Oh, you know what? I think I'm a woman. It is absolutely insane. Another insane thing, they had a report of a man, the first man ever to have a baby. And you read down the article, he was born a woman. So it was just another woman having a baby. Because in her little mind, she took male hormones and decided she was a male. You were born a female. Your body is a female. If you're born a male, your body is a male. And all this left is trying to blur it. It's just like living in a fucking crazy house. And this stupid idea of gender neutral toilets now. This is ridiculous. If a child goes into one of these gender neutral, and this man who says he thinks he's a woman, now he may not even think he's a woman. He may just be going in there so he can grope children. Like, this is just ridiculous. Instead of having this way, gender neutral, just have a toilet where men and women can go. I'd rather be around that than having this one who can see loopholes, because in the end of the day, this man who thinks he's woman, he's still a hell lot stronger than women. And he's 2.5 times stronger than the average woman, pound for pound. These are facts. Now, facts are real. They're not opinions. Opinions are, like, the leftist likes to think facts are opinions. Opinion is, I don't like that colour red. I like the colour blue. That is my opinion. A fact is that I am 5'6". That is a fact, not an opinion. My weight is a fact. My height is a fact. My hair colour is a fact. They're not opinions. And that is something the left just can't understand. If I walk down the road at 11 o'clock, that is a fact, not an opinion. An opinion is something I don't like, colour brown or something. It just gets more crazy listening to them. It really is like... And it's just basic things that you shouldn't really have to explain, particularly to a government coming out with this crap. That's the most insane thing. Our government is spewing this bloody bullshit with the media. Media, government and banks are our enemies. And we all better wake up and know who your enemy are. The enemy are your banks, the enemy is the media, and the enemy is your government. So instead of sitting there, spread this information out, start educating yourself and educate others. Take your money out of your banks. Find another way of saving, because the banks are your enemy, not your friends. The government is your enemy, not your friend. As I've been saying for ages, we all need to learn how to take our kids out of school and send them to hedge schools, as they have done in our past. We need to stop recognising our government and start seeing them as the regime, and stop recognising everything on that way. We need to set up a new way, a commune of some sort, a conservative way of life. so we can respect our culture, our heritage, and everything that's come before us, and that we understand the way forward. Not this madness of leftist gender neutrality, gender X, gender this. It all gets too much. And this is not, our children will be, and grandchildren will be charging us for abuse, for the amount of abuse that is happening in this country. They talk about the Catholic abuse. We haven't seen anything left. Anything yet on the amount of children who will have sex changes because at 10 years old, they didn't really have a bloody clue. They just like playing football. And some idiot leftists decided that they were more of a boy, that they should be able to have a sex change. This is dangerous. And the under 16 can have an abortion without her parents' consent and can die if we go on the way which we are, on the American kind of crazy way, that we get rid of not that there is a manslaughter, there isn't anything for abortion because it hasn't just come in. So when the child dies in the abortion, nothing can be done. It's crazy times, people. It's like waking up in the madhouse, and every time you read the papers, you realise it's not getting any better. It's just getting worse. We're all getting used to it. And you're all accepting it as if it's becoming normal. You all are being brainwashed. Because my dad's generation or the generation before, if you'd done any of these things to them, they would be up and a roar. But because it's been broken down bit by bit since education, since our education, we've been broken down, that we're starting to accept everything. And I was talking to someone, acceptance of paedophilia is on its way. You look around in Europe, the age limit for sex for children is getting younger and younger. And that will become some sort of, I don't know, pedosexual, and that it'll be normalized like everything else. And that's where we're heading. That is where we're heading. And you're sitting back and accepting all this. This is so sick. And it's such a horrible, horrible, dangerous, destructive government we have that has destroyed our culture, our heritage. Our tribe of ancient Irish people has all been destroyed. You just look in any town or city in Ireland now, it's no longer Irish. There's nothing that represents Ireland anymore. It's been absolutely taken down and destroyed. And instead of trying to bring back Irish people from countries around the world, they're bringing in other cultures. They don't want the Irish back in. It's sad, horrific days. But the only good news is Brexit is going to happen. So, you know what? I'm looking forward to, a victory away from the elite. It's a small victory because she signed the UN Pact, so it's not really a huge victory. But at least, you know what? Instead of defeat after defeat and you all being asleep and accepting it, at least I feel it's one victory. It's a victory for freedom, that the people are willing to stand up and fight for their freedom, and that's a hope for us all. Thank you for listening on The Bon Marie Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio.
You are listening to Irish News Radio and irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.